your screws and your brews. That's why now there's a beer brew just for the fastener industry. That's right. You drove all day to make that call. The beer you'll pour, it must be tall. Yeah. Old rusty bowl. Yeah. You sold those screws and bolts and nuts, and now it's time to fill your guts, that's clear. Old rusty boat. Yeah. Forget about cold filtered. Old Rusty's cold-headed for fastener people just like you. It's the beer that could have made Rockford, Illinois famous until we had to start importing some of the pure 100% natural ingredients that go into every batch. It's got that full-threaded flavor, but with a third less oxides, so you can keep enjoying Old Rusty long after the warehouse or show floors close down for the day. That's also why Old Rusty's available in quarter kegs and now in convenient pallets too. Keep it flowing, house. Old Rusty Bowl.
It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the SCH Sourcing Network. This is Eric Dudas, and I'm joined, as always, with my partner. He's a man who believes that knowing the ASME standards is more than just good business. It's every citizen's duty, Mr. Brian Musker. Brian, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thanks. I'm not sure if I'd agree completely with the importance of ASME numbers. You know, I'm a bit more of one of these DIN people, okay?
Well, you get the point. Hey, it's episode number 10, everybody, and we'll upload it to the fullythreaded.com website on August 26th, 2010. We're glad you could join us. Hard to believe we're in the double digits already, isn't it, Bri?
Oh, no, yeah, pretty amazing, isn't it?
And it's going to be a great show. On this, the 10th edition of Fully Threaded Radio, we're going to talk with the editor of Fastener Technology International magazine, Mr. Mike McNulty. He's a guy who knows a heck of a lot about this industry, and from a variety of different levels, too. We'll find out about how he came into his current position and some of his thoughts on the industry and the world in general. Then we'll talk with Dr. Tony Luscher, professor at Ohio State University, and he's been heading up a program that's designed to really cultivate some knowledge in the engineering world about threaded fastening, and that's a subject that we've talked about before on the show, and we'll get an update from him and learn a little bit more about what's happening over at Ohio State.
Actually, Tony's the Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering, and he has been involved in fasteners and at really the forefront of some of the development of the newer applications of fasteners, so he's a really interesting guy to listen to.
That's right. We had a great conversation with him. We're going to get things kicked off, however, with an update on what's going on with the NFDA and the upcoming fall meeting with Matt Ulrich, who is the current Vice President of the NFDA. He's also the President of Assembled Products. So it's a great lineup. Thanks for joining us once again. It is episode 10. We're glad to be here. Some said it would never happen, but here we are. It's a great feeling to know we've got some support out there and a growing audience, and we appreciate everybody who's helped us along, and of course also everybody who's subscribed to the show. The number keeps growing each episode.
Right, and people do that, as they know, from the Fully Threaded page. We'll go into that a little bit later.
It's probably a smart thing to restate the mission of the show for folks who are tuning in for the first time. Fully Threaded Radio really is our attempt to connect the fastener industry, and more particularly, we're the people who bring you FastenersClearinghouse.com and run the FCH sourcing network, which we hope you're utilizing, or your inside sales people and purchasing people are at least. And really, when we kicked this thing off, we were hoping to develop a communication channel that would unite users of the network, unite the industry, and really try to do something that hadn't really been done before.
Yeah, I think we've achieved that mission.
A few raised eyebrows, that's true. But in the process, I think we've proven that new ideas are valuable and they're worth trying. So we'll keep bringing the show to you. We hope you'll keep feeding back. You can contact us at ftr@fullythreaded.com.
Yeah, don't be frightened. It's just an email, okay?
And regarding FastenersClearinghouse.com, we work very hard to make sure that it's a very, very useful tool for you. There's no charge if you haven't gotten out there. There's over 500,000 line items online that you can use to search and source anytime the need arises. And since the last episode, we've really seen kind of an uptick in traffic. Late August has been particularly strong. We've actually had some near record days.
We see it particularly in the number of people who are actually putting through the email requests for information about fasteners. I mean, we encourage that, and so do our members, because it provides a sort of an electronic track of the items that you've requested information about. And, of course, you should also, if it's really critical, you should use the phone as well. But an email is a good follow-up. And, of course, if you've logged in, then it's very easy because all the information is already filled in for you.
Yeah, that's true. We encourage all FCH members to log in whenever they're searching and sourcing. It's not required, but it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, we've got one big piece of news since the last episode, and I think that will be a contributing factor to the uptick in traffic, and that is that we've brought on nearly 250 Fastenal branches, and we've been really scrambling to work with all of the branches, and you've been really at the forefront of that effort.
Well, see, it's been a fair amount of work because the Fastenal store is not really the model under which we originally designed our system, and we've had to put in place a mechanism that really makes it logical and reasonable for Fastenal, and while keeping it the same great value for all our other members. And what we're seeing now is the beginning of the Fastenal stores loading up their inventory.
The interesting thing that I've noticed is actually, I think, pretty positive. We were concerned when we decided to begin loading up Fastenal stores, and incidentally, this is the north central region that we're putting online. Our concern was that we would create kind of a lopsided effect on the network, and we were really hoping to avoid that. But what we've done is we've limited the number of inventory items that each branch can put on, and so far there seem to be more inquiries being generated by the Fastenal folks than there is actually inventory requests. So kind of the fear we had that they'd be sucking some of the air out of the room really hasn't come to pass.
Well, they have, the same problem as anyone else in the industry, which is, now that we're in a situation, and have been for the last 9 months, of really decreased inventory levels, some fastener items are really hard to find, and people still want them. And when they come looking for them, then they need a place where they can find some of these unusual items, and Fasteners Clearinghouse is one of those places, if not best place.
That's right. There's a lot of spot buys going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that's been taking up a lot of our time has been the ongoing effort to bring on the NFDA members, and that's been going really pretty well. I've been doing that along with Sue Rice, our membership coordinator, and also the lovely and talented Lim Dempsey. So we've chipped away at that list, and I think we're just about through it.
Yes, and they bring an interesting set of different members to us because they're probably, in general, people who are not that familiar with Fasteners Clearinghouse and still think of us as we were 5 years ago as, like an electronic version of a book. And The difference, of course, is that in the 5 years the world's changed a bit, especially in the fastener industry. The web's become much more the place to search for stuff rather than flicking over pages. And a lot of these companies that we're now bringing on are facing the fact that, hey, this is a place you can actually use.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a lot going on here at FCH, and we'll keep you posted. And that's, again, one of the reasons that we started Fully Threaded.
And I want to take a moment to remind everyone that you should, to continue receiving the best source finders, the ones that suit you the most, go into your preferences and set your source finder preferences the way that you really want them. You can select whether you want to receive source finders for metric, whether you want to receive them from only other distributors or from everyone. And in the end, that will make what the source finder sent to you much more relevant.
Yeah, that's a good point. And on the last episode, we mentioned some of the new settings that are available, and that's really allowing members to refine the items that they receive.
Yeah.
I guess it's a good moment to also remind FCH members that with this influx of new members, it's really smart for you to update and refresh your inventory listings. That's really going to be helpful in terms of getting the most out of your network membership.
Yes, I forgot to say that. Yes, and for a number of reasons. Now, reason number one is that clearly a lot of people find us from Google, and Google loves new content. So every time someone refreshes their listings, Google sees a change in the layout of the page, and Google and Bing come through looking at these big index pages, like on average at least once a day. So the listings go higher.
So get in there and get busy, FCH members.
Right.
Thanks for your participation also. And speaking of participation, there was a thread this week on the Fastener Talk blog at fastenerblog.net. It was called Dangerous Technology. It was a pretty interesting thread, and I thought you'd jump in on this one, Bri.
Well, I was sort of a little bit caught up. I've been doing all these changes to the scrubber and getting ready for this Fastenal introduction.
Right. Well, there's a comment in there about doing some data backup to, I guess, servers that are located in Australia. And, well, I guess you'll have to read the thread to find out. But you're a man who likes a sheep farming joke just as much as the next man. I thought you would have really hit that one out of the park.
Well, no, sheep farming, it's more of a New Zealand thing.
Ah, gotcha. Well, I've got to keep those international nuances in mind. And speaking of that, there is one organization that's trying to do just that, and that's the NFDA. So why don't we get this episode of Fully Threaded underway with our first guest, and he's Matt Ulrich.
Yep, let's get the show on the road.
Matt Ulrich, you are the Vice President of the NFDA. Welcome to Fully Threaded.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
Hey, it's our pleasure. As you know, we had Jim Derry on a couple of times, and with the new partnership with Fasteners Clearinghouse and NFDA, we look forward to really getting a lot of news on a regular basis from you folks.
Well, we appreciate it. I mean, having a partnership with FCH is something that we're trying to continually do for our membership, and it's just drive value. And I believe that partnership will go a long way into doing that.
Well, I hope so, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I'll tell you, you're not only the Vice President of NFDA, you're also the President of Assembled Products, and you have quite a history. It's an interesting one with Assembled Products and also with NFDA. I wonder if you could share that, because there's actually kind of a family tie, isn't there?
Yes, there is, and it's sort of interesting. I would say our company and my family has a long history. I'm newer to the fastener industry, but I've always heard once you're in it after 3 or 4 years, you're going to be in it for the rest of your life. And I know you've seen a lot of stories about that, but I'm hoping to grasp onto that. But you know how sometimes you look into the rearview mirror of your car and you wonder, how did you get here? And I went to school, a small Midwestern school, and studied to be an accountant and project manager, and did that for a while, and that got me out to Denver, Colorado, where I married a beautiful girl and got introduced to her parents. And unbeknownst to me, my father-in-law had been in the fastener industry for 30 to 35 years in a company called Iowa Industrial Products. So after 5 years of marriage, my father and mother-in-law convinced us to move back to Des Moines, Iowa. And upon that time, I told my wife that there would be a couple things when I moved back, a couple of rules that, you know, we could go back, and I'd love to be closer to family. We can have kids. Everything will be just fantastic, but I don't want to work for your father-in-law. Well, 6 months later, I was working for my father-in-law. So that's funny how things happen. But he and his father had started a small company called Iowa Industrial Products 35 years ago. And over that 35 years, they grew a strong relationship to a large OEM in the Midwest, John Deere. And they grew the company from a small family-owned company into about 150 employees, $60 million company. And they sold in 1999, I believe, to Bossard. And at that point in time, my father-in-law spent some time running the Bossard North America company in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And a few years later, I was hired on as a project manager. And I was a project manager for Bossard for about a year. At the end of that time, I was asked by my father-in-law to separate a small part of the company called the Kits and Assemblies Unit from Bossard. Bossard's more of a raw product distributor, and the Kits and Assemblies aspect of Bossard's business was more of what I would call a value-added packaging part of the operation. And I split that part out, and at the end of the project, my father-in-law asked me if he should buy it. And looking at the finances, I said, no, this just isn't going to work. And he said, well, Matt, it is going to work. I'm going to buy it. And I'm like, well, I looked at the numbers again. I'm like, are you sure? He goes, how about this? I'm so sure, I'm going to have you run it for me. At that point, I looked at the finance again. Oh, that's not such a bad idea. So that's the long, drawn-out story, but that's the day I became president of Assembled Products, and learning from my father-in-law every day of the week since.
And the tie-in with the NFDA comes where?
The tie-in is that Ed's father, Dan McElhan, was one of the original 7 or 8 members that got together, I think now it's 42 years ago, and started to get together and discuss best practices with the industry leaders at that time. And from those original members, it grew into a large association called the NFDA. And it is a large part of what I would call our family history. Dan was president, and I don't know the year, but a long time ago, let's say. Ed was president. Ed's brother, Joe McElhan, has been president. And Ed knew when we got into business under Assembled Products that we need to become heavily involved in the NFDA because of the value it brings to us as far as networking, as far as relationships, and that he had hoped that I would become a future leader of NFDA as well. And I wanted to grasp that, and what NFDA brings to me is trying to jump in with both feet and learn those important, I guess the important part of the industry, to learn about the relationships, to learn what really makes companies go, and that is the people that run the companies. And it's been, on a personal note, it's been invaluable to me to be part of the NFDA.
That's a great story. You obviously have a lot to bring because you've got the youth to bring the energy, but you've also got kind of a fresh perspective because you are a relative newcomer to the industry, while at the same time you've got a long history and a real attachment to the industry.
I think that's exactly it. And as I get into the industry, there's lots of stories, I wouldn't say exactly like mine, but there's lots of stories of businesses or companies that have been in families for long periods of time. And myself coming maybe from the outside into more of an accounting project management role helps me take a fresh look at where the NFDA was and where it's going. And through talking to Jim, we're changing the strategies of what NFDA was to hopefully what NFDA will come to be. And I think it is driving new values. It's making sure that there's a return on investment for every member. So hopefully that does help.
Right. And we've talked a little bit about some of the new plans and what was announced at the spring meeting, and that's something that we're going to keep driving here on Fully Threaded. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in the near future, because there are a couple of events, and I think both of these are other opportunities to drive home this new direction. The first one, of course, is the Executive Sales Planning Sessions coming up in Chicago. That's September 14th and 15th. I know you've had some meetings this week to kind of firm up plans on that. What do you see going forward for this?
It's a really exciting meeting. It's 2 days worth of content. ESPS stands for the Executive Sales Planning Sessions, and what it does, it provides a unique opportunity for individuals to have one-on-one content. And what happens here is the associate members, which you could consider as manufacturers or master distributors or importers, send out invitations to distributors or vice versa. And we can get into a room and have a one-on-one discussion. And in this, what I'll call a relaxed environment. You can either make introductions, you can talk about current business that you have, you can talk about big picture items or even small picture items, and it's a great time to do, I would say, one-on-one networking rather than be in what we consider normal networking out with a large population shaking hands. This is very focused content. So that it's always been exciting and really does drive that value that we've been talking about and discussing.
And you've also got a pretty powerful keynote speaker lined up, don't you?
Sam Geist is the individual, and I don't know if many people have heard him speak, but what he does is he brings experience of starting a small distribution company and growing it into a 15-store, $40 million mega sports type store and selling that off. And what he did is he used his experience and turned himself into a public speaker, and he's fantastic. He offers a great perspective, and he's good at sharing those ideas to people and speaking directly to their problems. And once again, something they can bring back to their own individual situations and improve on them. The other thing that we're excited about is having a technology panel discussion, and what we're going to focus that on is the CRM technology and how we can use that technology really to drive sales. That's the end goal. How do you use technology to drive sales? So I really think what the technology panel brings to the table is going to be fantastic. It's how do you utilize social networking skills, mobile computing options, and CRM tools to drive more value to the company, to drive sales to the company. And what I'm really trying to drive out there is that this is going to be the first meeting that is open to other associations. The association we've invited is the Midwest Fastener Association to take part, and they're invited for this first day of content to listen to Sam Geist, to listen to the technology panel, and then take part in a networking session after all that's done. So I think it's a great way to get more members involved and to get other associations involved and just to have a good time. So I look forward to it being very successful.
That really sounds like a worthwhile meeting, and I look forward to attending and participating. Then just a short time after that, of course, we've got NIFS West in Las Vegas, and that's November 8th, 9th, and 10th. What does NFDA have lined up for that, Matt?
Well, it's the first time NFDA is going to participate in a non-booth function. We're actually going to put a panel together called Looking to the Future, and the panel is going to highlight the current state of the fastener supply chain, and we're going to bring together representatives of top distribution companies, manufacturing companies, distributing companies, and importers, just to speak on their respective organizations' view into what's happening now and what's happening in the future. And I think it's a good way to get involved with non-members of the NFDA because it is open to the public. It's on Monday the 8th, and there's a $25 charge.
Yeah, actually, the website for that is www.fastenershows.com, and I believe they've got information about online registration there. And FastenersClearinghouse.com will be exhibiting at NIFS West again this year. We'll be in booth 1321, so we'll see you out there as well. Well, to give an update to everybody about the partnership with NFDA and FCH, which we mentioned at the top of this discussion, we've been making some really good headway going through the roster and bringing NFDA members online into the FCH sourcing network. And by and large, it's really been pretty successful. I think we're just about through the roster at this point.
Well, I appreciate that. I did want to bring up, Eric, that you've been a wonderful organization to work with. What we found is you bringing your passion to this project, you've actually pushed this out to the membership, and it's been really easy to start receiving the Source Finder RFQs. They're coming across my desk or my salesperson's desk, and it's starting to provide some leads, and we're going to go in and modify some profiles and then hopefully start selling. So it's a great tool, and I really hope that members start using your tool. And guys, feel free to contact myself, or I know Eric, for listening to your past. We can always write you an email with questions, comments, or concerns. And, I appreciate you guys partnering up with NFDA to do this.
Absolutely. It's working both ways. And that's true. We're always receptive to input. Of course, with Fully Threaded, that's ftr@fullythreaded.com. And FCH business can go right through the website at fastenersclearinghouse.com. So, in conclusion, it's great to have you on Fully Threaded Radio. I hope you'll come on again and update us as events unfold. And, of course, next up, you're the incoming president of NFDA, aren't you? When does that all take place?
It'll start in the spring meeting, 2011, and Tell you what, I'm going to have big shoes to fill with Jim Deary. He's been great to work with, and you know, he is a leader. I tell you, so those will be tough shoes to fill, but I'm going to do the best I can. We've got an outstanding board that will help make good decisions and lead NFDA in the future.
That all sounds very, very positive, and look forward to being there with you. Well, Matt, you are the president of Assembled Products. You're the vice president of the NFDA. Thanks so much again for joining us on Fully Threaded.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on.
Mike McNulty is coming up next on Fully Threaded.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
This is Jackie Ventura with iFast Group, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio. Back to the show.
As we've been going along here at Fully Threaded, we've been addressing more serious subjects. And I tell you, when I think about serious journalism in the fastener world, there's really one magazine that I think of, and that's Fastener Technology International. We're fortunate to have the editor of that magazine with us. He's Mike McNulty. Mike, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.
We've talked at the shows and exchanged emails, and I'm sure many listeners have as well. But I'm sure lots of people would like to know how you came to your position with Fastener Technology. Could you share that with us?
Okay, it's actually, I was thinking about it before you contacted me today, and this is my 14th year with the magazine, and the way that I came into the fastener industry was by way of the wire and cable industry. I took a job for this publishing company as a magazine editor for a magazine called Wire and Cable Technology, and they were also producing a magazine called Fastener Technology, and as most of your listeners probably know, fasteners start out as wire, in most cases, mechanical wire that's cold formed usually, and then threaded into fasteners. So I took over the editorial title for the Fastener magazine as well as the Wire and Cable magazine. And prior to that, I worked in the wire and cable industry for about 10 years. I started out as a manufacturing engineer for a company that makes automotive cables for General Motors. Today it's called Delphi Packard Electric. Right. And then after that, I worked for some capital equipment suppliers that made equipment for making different types of wire and cable and fiber optic cable, communications cable, electrical wire and cable, and things like that. And these were technical sales and marketing positions. So along the way, I wrote technical articles on different processes for making wire and cable as well as machinery for making wire and cable. And some of those were published in the Wire and Cable magazine that is produced by the company that publishes Fastener Technology. Then at one point they had an opening for the editor of the magazines, and they were companies located in Ohio, which is where I grew up, and it was a chance to get involved in the writing aspect, which I've always enjoyed, and combine that with the manufacturing engineering background that I have, and then the sales and marketing background. So that's how everything came together, and I started, like I said, almost 14 years ago, managing all the editorial content for the magazines, and slowly but surely time has moved on, and it's been a good fit. I like doing it, and I like the technical aspects of the industries was the first draw, and then I enjoy the publishing part.
Well, it sounds like a position that really ties it all together for you, and I must say you have a real flair for writing about some of these subjects, and that includes both the technical articles and then also the editorial that you write.
I appreciate that. And the approach I've always had on the editorial page, it's a commentary, it's an opinion. Before I started writing editorials, I would look at other ones, and it was seemed like a common thing in magazines, especially in business-to-business magazines, for people just to tell you what was in the magazine. And I thought, well, they can read the table of contents for that.
Right.
And growing up, people always told me I was fairly opinionated, or I could defend opinions pretty strongly. And so I thought, well, I'm going to write about things in an opinionated way, which is what the editorial page should be. The news sections are news, the articles are articles, and the editorial page is commentary and opinion. So it's always been my goal is to express an opinion, whether you agree with it or not. That's not the issue. The issue is to have an opinion and then try to build a case for it with facts.
Yeah, well, we have read numerous of your opinions, and they're very interesting. I'm sure they must invoke a few comments to you.
Yeah, I get some good ones, and then sometimes people say that I shouldn't be expressing my opinion, but then I think they don't understand that it's an opinion page. But
right, okay.
That's how you know you're doing a good job.
Yep.
Well, that raises a question. How do you see, or how do you define the mission of the magazine?
Well, the mission of the magazine, of Fastener Technology International, is to bring news and information and technology to fastener manufacturers, distributors, and users on how they can, make, distribute, sell, or use fasteners, and how they can do it in a competitive way, in a way that makes them more money and more successful. In general, we cover the machines, materials, and accessories that are used to make, distribute, and use fasteners. Our approach is that it's an international magazine, and the magazine is in its 33rd year, and it's international in scope and in readership. The magazine's read in 90 different countries on the print version. We have a digital version that goes to over 100 different countries, and we've got subscribers to the print edition in the neighborhood of 13,000 registered subscribers on the print side, and on the digital side we've got another, I believe it's over 3,000 now that get the digital-only edition, and there's some crossover there too. So we're international in the readership as well as in the content of the magazine, and we look at the industry from a global perspective, and we also look at it from the entire industry, not just a slice. Like we don't look just at manufacturing or just at distributing. We look at the entire cradle to grave of the fastener industry, how it starts as raw material and is made into a fastener, how it's distributed or imported, how it's used at the end. So we look at the whole industry from a geographical perspective and from a processing perspective.
Right, you read one issue and you can tell it's really not like any other magazine in the industry. Let me ask you, you mentioned the digital version, and of course listeners can access the website for Fastener Technology at www.fastenertech.com, and the digital version is no charge affair. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yes, it's a no charge. They're both at no charge. The print subscriptions are no charge, but the qualification is simple, that you have to be a professional involved in the fastener industry, either on the manufacturer, distributor, importer, user, supplier to the industry, and then you're qualified for circulation. So we guarantee to our advertisers that the people that are getting the magazine actually want the magazine, so they have to request it and personally request it, and then we qualify them that they're in the industry, and then they get it. The same thing with the digital one. You have to answer a couple questions and provide your name and your email, and then you get access to the digital edition as well. And that again is free to read it.
How long have you been operating the digital side?
I think this is about third year.
Now, have you seen a change? I mean, 3 years ago, a lot has changed in the fastener industry in 3 years. Technically, because, probably 4 years ago, the view was that the fastener industry didn't even exist anywhere on the web.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty mature industry and slow to adapting technology. We've seen, a steady growth of people that look at it on the digital side. We have some people that get both the print and the digital, and some, a big thing is people where it's hard to get quick delivery. They like to have access to the digital side, and then you're able to do, print out whatever pages you want. You can do online translations and stuff like that. So we see a lot of interest for the international reader.
Right.
And then, then other readers that everything in the magazine's not for everybody. You know, if you're a salesman and you're just trying to keep tabs on the industry, you maybe don't enjoy the technical articles, but you want to skim quickly through there, and you're looking for your customer's name, or you're looking for different trends, or you're looking for your competitor too, and you just want to do it quickly. I think the digital edition is good for that. But we still have a lot of readers that, I mean, the majority of the readers still prefer the print. There's a lot of content in it there. If you've looked at the magazine, it take a long time to read it. Sometimes we think maybe there's too much content in there, but that's always been our things. We provide a lot.
Well, that all makes a lot of sense. You know, speaking of the digital side of the fastener world, of course, recently you did a guest blog on Fastener Talk, and you were talking about a subject that's pretty interesting, and we've been talking a lot about around here lately, and that's the relative health of the manufacturing sector in the United States. You've got a lot of thoughts on that, especially with headlines today. I noticed China has just surpassed officially Japan as the number 2 economy.
Right.
What do you see in all this? What can you embellish on this post that you did?
Yeah, I wrote a little bit about, it was tied into other news on China. I wrote about manufacturing, and there was a prediction, I think it was about a month and a half ago, that China was going to overtake the United States as the number 1 manufacturing country in the year 2011. And I've written about manufacturing before, and like I said, that's one of the main segments of our coverage is manufacturing. Also, from a personal standpoint, I started out as a manufacturing engineer, so I've always enjoyed manufacturing, how things are made, and things like that. And we've had this trend over the last 10 years or so saying, well, manufacturing's dead. Nobody makes anything in the United States or any other developed country anymore. We don't need to make anything. We're just a service-oriented country and things like that. And so, what I laid out in the post there was, or in the article, was the importance of manufacturing. And in my opinion, the countries are defined in a lot of ways by what they make and what they can design. And we also laid out some facts there that the United States is still the number 1, and it's been number 1 producing manufacturing country and a nation in the world for over 100 years. And the amount of money that goes into that, the research and development that comes from it, how many people are employed in it, and I'm just laying out the case of it being of why it's important and shouldn't be ignored. And it's still a lot of manufacturing going on in this country. We're still a number 1 producer. And then I was also saying, okay, there's predictions that China's going to take it over. And my point of the post was does anybody care anymore that they're going to take it over? And I was trying to make a case for why we should be working to bolster manufacturing in this country as well as in any country.
It's an interesting perspective. If you lived outside of the United States, of course, that's what people regard the United States as, the great manufacturing giant of the world. And
right.
People within the United States sort of think, so we don't care if a bit of it goes off to China or somewhere else. But that, in fact, is the major part of the identity of the United States.
Yeah. Even my kids are like, well, nothing's made in the United States. Everything's made from China. I'm like, all right, you guys got to look at, yes, all the things are made from China. And if you walk around Walmart or Target, yeah, it's all coming from China because they've worked diligently with China to help us make these things. But there's still a lot of stuff that's made in the United States. And, if we just ignore it, it will disappear. And the standard of living will disappear with it.
Right.
Well, you continue in this article and offer 3 particulars, or I guess 3 suggestions for staving off this decline, and those are very well worth talking about. But before we do that, I'd just like to discuss the takeaway that I got from this, and that is the innovation and the implications on innovation. Now, the question that I have is, so fine, if manufacturing were to leave and disperse throughout the planet in places other than North America, let's say, or the United States, let's say, what does that do to innovation, and what does that mean about the quality of life that we all enjoy? And I don't hear it discussed very often at all.
I mean, if manufacturing disappears, there's no innovation. And I'm not saying that, that everything needs to be made in one place. It's it's always a moving target. Manufacturing is a moving target, and things have moved from, you start out low-cost producers, and then you get a higher standard of living, and then you stop making certain things, and they go to other countries. They go to, we'll look at fasteners. The evolution. They go to Taiwan. They went to Japan first, then they went to Taiwan. They've gone to China. They've gone to Mexico. They've gone to India, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody in those countries has a desire to increase their standard of living and provide for their family as well, to design things and to make things competition is a good thing. So I think that, the international competition is good, and that, in countries that are developed, you need to work on innovation and make things that are more complicated than low-cost countries can make. So you keep moving your target and keep a focus. There's still things to be made and things to be built, and it can be innovation drives at more complex things and more complex parts that can save money. They maybe cost more, but they save money in the long run, so that people have a desire to get them. And your manufacturing should evolve as innovation drives it. And the three things we mentioned, those weren't really mine. They came from the CEO of Dow Chemical. Talked about regulatory reform, tax policy, and reducing lawsuit abuse and things like that. But in general, you need a environment that is welcoming to manufacturing and is welcoming to innovation and investments. Because people who invest money in manufacturing and in innovation and design and engineering, they're going to gravitate to the places where they're welcome. And if you created an environment where they're not welcome and people don't care about it anymore, they're going to go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. So do you think then that the current environment in the United States is welcoming?
No, not in most places. It's not. I don't think so. I think when you have the higher and higher taxes, it's higher reform. One of the regulatory reforms I mentioned in the article is that the UAW is asking for new regulatory standards on workers' exposure to metalworking fluids. And I know people who work in the industry who make metalworking fluids, and they say the requests are just arbitrarily based. They're not based on science or fact. They're just, okay, we want to increase the regulation by tenfold just because we think it makes sense. And that's not just manufacturers, but for anybody who wants to hire workers. It's difficult to expand your business. And then when you have lawsuit abuse and other things, in that area, it's just more difficult. You've seen in Michigan the exodus of manufacturing out of Michigan. It goes to other states within the United States that are more welcoming to it. But in general, we're developing a culture that's like saying, if it's not a green job or if it's not a service-oriented job, then we don't want to pay any attention to it. And I think that's a mistake.
Right.
So we need to strike a balance between being welcoming and being responsible. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. But the responsibility should be based on facts and not just on arbitrary information.
I'd agree with that. Is this what they call rampant crony capitalism?
Well, I mean, it's free market, and but what you have going on in China, you have a combination of communism, socialism, and free market. The government is heavily involved in pushing, and they've been very successful in China. And China is going to take over. They're growing at almost 10% per year, and they're going to take over the manufacturing crown.
That's the way it looks, Mike. But the question is, this comes back to what we were talking about a few moments ago. Does that environment foster long-term innovation, or does it eventually snuff out innovation? And if so, then where does the innovation take place?
Well, no. Are you saying as the China one fostering innovation?
Right.
No, not really. China's a lot of it what it's built on is copying what other people do. If you've ever been to China or any trade shows or even anywhere in China, there's little or no respect for intellectual property, and they do want to be successful. They do want to prosper, but they don't care about intellectual property. So at the moment, there's not a big incentive for designing things. It's just, let's copy the stuff that was designed in Europe or in North America. And they're proud of doing that. You go to a trade show for the fastener industry in China, and there's copycat machines and products all over the place. In the fastener industry as well as Rolex watches and handbags and everything else, and these guys are proud of the copies. And what the people who design the machines, put in the time and the money to design the machines do is they will keep designing new stuff, and they try to stay one step ahead of the Chinese. So right now, the Chinese model is not fostering innovation, but there will be companies that are successful, and they're going to take that money, and then they're probably going to invest it into research and development, I would think. And then they'll start some of the innovation. But as long as the government has a firm hand in the business in China, that may not happen, and that it may even collapse. I mean, we have an example of government fusion with industries here. Recently with the banking industry, with the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae And their mortgage debt grew from $15 billion in 1970 to $5 trillion in 2008 when they collapsed. And that comes out to 16.5% growth per year over 38 years. And that's that's almost double of what China's doing. But I'm going off on a tangent here, I'm trying to tie it into your innovation thing, is when the government has such a heavy hand in there and deciding is forcing the growth. Sometimes it's built on nothing. It's built on sand, and then it collapses. And that very may well happen in China. But the problem is, along the way, you have so many casualties of other manufacturers in the United States or in other countries that just couldn't compete, and they're out of business. So their government is very pro growth in manufacturing. I don't think it's the right, it's not totally free market, so it's not the right way to go. It might collapse, but they may take down other countries in the process if we don't put a priority on maintaining manufacturing, being friendly to manufacturing, giving them tax breaks and giving them support. The government and the culture should support manufacturing.
Is there anywhere in the world right now that you see is favorable, or where is the most favorable climate for the kind of innovation that we're talking about right now?
I think the favorable to business growth and manufacturing growth are definitely China and India, and they're placing a value on that right now.
Do you see a difference between China and India? Is there a difference in the respect of intellectual property between China and India?
Yeah, I think they don't respect it the way they should either. But are they as bad or rampant as China? I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, there's people in China, they're proud of, they'll show you, look at this machine that I copied. It looks like company XYZ from Germany or from the United States, and they're proud of it. And India does that too, but maybe not as blatant. India looks a little bit more to the West for innovations and to incorporate them rather than just steal them, I guess.
Okay.
But I don't see a lot of innovation coming out of India.
Let's talk a little bit about Fastener Tech. It's coming up, in a mere 10 months. But I bet you're getting things already, and you're working on Fastener Tech in cooperation with the Midwest Fastener Association. Isn't that right?
Correct. Yeah, Fastener Tech is a industry event. It's a trade show and some education sessions and some networking opportunities that we co-produce with the Midwest Fastener Association. And your listeners are probably familiar with the Midwest Fastener Association, but they're the oldest fastener association in the United States. I think they were founded in the 1940s. And their membership started as a Chicago Fastener Association and has expanded to the Midwest areas of the United States. But I think they have members across the whole country, and their members represent all segments: manufacturers, distributors, importers, and suppliers to the industry. And in 2005, they joined with a manufacturing-based show to create something called Fastener Week in 2005, and they put on trade shows side by side, one for fastener manufacturers and the other one for fastener distributors and importers. And they were done side by side, and they liked that all-industry approach. Well, their partners on the manufacturing side decided to go to a different show in 2007. So the Midwest Fastener Show was left without a partner. And we had worked with them, not as an owner of the show or a producer of the show in 2005, but we had done the technical seminar. So the Midwest Fastener Association asked us if we would be interested in working with them to keep the show going, and we renamed it Fastener Tech because the show didn't last a week anymore. It was we looked at the industry and we saw that people didn't want to spend a whole week at a trade show. They didn't have the time or the money to do it, and we wanted to target a show that recognized the changing economy, the changing dynamics of people can do a lot of research on the internet and in different ways than they could in the past, and they didn't need to spend a long time at a trade show. So we hooked up with the Midwest Fastener Association in 2007 and made the first Fastener Tech show, and it was a 2-day show, and it had exhibits that were targeted to the entire industry. And it was an exhibition, it was some technical seminars and some networking opportunities, a reception, I think they had a golf outing and a boat cruise. And then so that was the first show in 2007, and it was a big success, and people liked the location of the show, the all-industry aspect of the show. And the location is in the heart of the industry. It's in the Rosemont, Chicago area. And we had done some research, and we found that 3/4 of the fastener industry in the United States is located in the Great Lakes states of Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And so we thought we needed to still have some kind of event in the heart of the industry, so that's why the location of Rosemont, Chicago was picked. And we also wanted to make it reasonable in cost and easy to attend, and so that's what we did in 2007. 2009, we repeated the format, and of course, it landed right in the middle of the recession.
Right.
So so the numbers were down, obviously, but it was still a successful event, and we had some survey results from the attendees at this show, and they were similar to what we had the first year, and we had over 80% liked the all fastener industry focus of the show. Over 90% liked the location and turnkey pricing for exhibit space, and then 80% said they would recommend the show to other people in the industry. So we knew from survey results and from feedback that we were on the right track, and we're going into our third staging this coming June in 2011. It's the same location, Rosemont, Chicago, same all-industry focus. We're going to have an exhibit, some seminars, a reception, and some other networking opportunities.
What are the dates of this year's show, Mike?
June in 2011. Actually, it's June 13th through 15th, and the 15th day is one of the optional networking events. But the exhibits are just the 13th and 14th.
And I'm guessing that listeners are going to be able to get all the details of the show in the upcoming months on your website, which is www.fastenertech.com. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, you can get information on the magazine about print and digital subscriptions. You can also click on the logo for the show, Fastener Tech 11, to get information on the show. We also have some news posts that are posted up there on occasion, and other information about different industry publications that we produce. But yes, everything can be found at the website.
Excellent. Well, I'm very, very glad that you were able to join us, and I hope we set the table. I hope you'll feel welcome to join us anytime, because you are one guy who has an interesting perspective on this industry, and you have a lot to say, and you say it very well.
I appreciate the opportunity. I've enjoyed your radio programs, and look forward to hearing the next one, and glad to work with you guys anytime.
Okay, that's our pleasure.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Dr. Tony Luscher of Ohio State University coming up next.
This is Sue Rice with the FCH team. It's my job to make sure that as an FCH member, you receive the highest possible benefit from your participation in the network. Did you know that once you're logged into FCH, you have access to exclusive search tools, site statistics, and tracking information about your inventory and source finder inquiries? It's all just a click away, and I'm happy to walk you through it. If it's time to refresh your inventory, don't worry. We'll run your listings through our scrubber software and get you up and running in a very short time. If you can attach a spreadsheet to an email, you can list inventory on FCH. We can also show you how to optimize your listings to attract the most hits for your type of fastener. Send email to Sue at fastenersclearinghouse.com and let me help you get the most from the FCH sourcing network. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Hi, this is Rich Cavoto with Metric and Multi-Standard, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We're joined now by Tony Luscher. He's Associate Professor with the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Ohio State University. Tony, welcome to Fully Threaded.
Thank you.
We first became acquainted at NIFS East in May, and that was just after I first learned about the new fastener curriculum being offered by your department, and that was being covered pretty thoroughly by American Fastener Journal. We're going to talk about that during this segment, but before we get into that, could you please share with us your background and how you became involved with the department?
Sure. You know, going into fastening is nothing I really ever expected to do.
In fact, when I graduated from college, if you told me that I'd be a professor and go into fastening, I probably would have laughed. Particularly because my father thought he was a product of depression, and he thought everything should be made out of metal and bolted together. So I went into polymers and snap fits as a career for a while.
Oh,
but
dear.
yes, I know that's a piece of venial sin, I'm sure.
Wow. Right.
But I went to work for the nuclear navy, and of course fastening was a tremendous issue there. I was there at a time when there was just a whole lot of these suspect fasteners, I'll call them, that were incorporated into feed pumps and other critical aspects of the submarine. And after I graduated my PhD, I came to Ohio State. I want to continue some of my fastening research, both in the area of what I'll call non-traditional fastening, fastenerless fastening, things like cell phones where there's no bolt per se, but you're nesting surfaces, you're constraining parts against each other, as well as I would call more traditional fastening, things with nuts and bolts. And, I might say before we get into other details, we're on the cusp of a new era. I'm heavily involved in the automotive industry's push toward, lightweight structures, things like multi-material joining,
right.
Where there will be bolts, there will be welds, but they will be in conjunction with other novel solutions, electromagnetic forming, pierceless rivets. So, I deal with fastening and assembly on a very broad level.
Okay, we can come back to that because that probably got people up in Everett and Washington who are dealing with similar novel problems, I think, too, with fasteners.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, the aerospace industry is, is in the same boat.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work for NASA, and they're in the middle of a cultural shift. They were one of the last aerospace companies to look at composites. If you look at their new Orion capsule and things like that, they're still taking ribs and stringers and putting aluminum over it with rivets. So, they're also reevaluating their assembly strategy.
Correct. Probably very, very carefully now that they've seen Boeing.
Right. And I want to say I hope people don't view this discussion as anti-bolt. I mean, we'll always have bolts. We'll always have rivets, but they're going to be one of several tools in the box that people are going to build large monolithic structures out of.
Well, I hope that's the case because, for one, I think our audience is breathing a sigh of relief right now. But probably more germane to the discussion, the new program at Ohio State is really focused on conventional fastening technology. Tell us, if you can, how did you come up with the concept for this new program?
We were approached by Mike McGuire. He noted, which is true, universities cover more and more things, and sometimes they cover them more and more thinly. And, he bemoaned the fact that many graduates know virtually nothing about threaded fasteners. I mean, they know there's a thread standard, they know there's load sharing in a bolt if it's designed well, but quickly we move on to other things in machine elements classes. And, that is a shame. And I might add, we might in the future use a few fewer bolts, but there will be better bolts, more critical bolts. So this is certainly, an important technology that will continue with new materials. So we started a class at Ohio State, and it's just on assembly, and about a third of the class is on, traditional bolting fastening. A third of it is the very high level of what we call attachment strategy. Whether you're using bolts or other strategies, people today do a very ad hoc process. They tend to look at a part on a CAD station and just throw bolts at it. And we actually wrote a piece of software that kinematically lets you locate the bolts the best spot in 3D space. So if you're Audi and designing a truss frame for an automobile and parts of it are bolted together, we help you determine, we're giving our students the tools to determine what's the best place and what angle to put the bolts on it. And then the remainder of it is, other, what I'll call assembly strategies. So, that's really the key point. We started this new class, and, we're trying to give our graduates a tool that they can do machine elements, help in assembly, and, be at a level that I think industry needs them to be at.
Can I ask you a question? Is there, given the fact that, there's parts of mechanical and civil that sort of rely on each other, especially if you're designing a building or something like that, How relevant is this to, say, civil engineers as well? I mean, I would think very.
It's very relevant. In fact, we have several students from civil engineering taking the class. And, depending what they're going into in civil,
right.
I think it's essential.
Yeah.
And I might add, civil is also looking at new things. They have bolt-on addendum to beam structures that are done. So in a sense, you're doing some of your bolting in the factory, but then, pieces come together like jigsaw puzzles with less fasteners in the field. So, they're also making changes, but, once again, fastening remains a key part of what they're doing.
You referred to a class. Now, the way the new fastener curriculum is configured, is it just the one class that covers threaded fastening?
That's it, and that's a lot more than we used to have. Like I said, without any exaggeration, if you took machine element sequence, it must be Tuesday because it's bolted fasteners. It was literally 1 week, which would be 2 long lectures.
This course, is it part of the engineering degree, or is it a postgraduate course?
You would take it as a technical elective, senior undergraduate, first-year graduate student. It's primarily taken by mechanical and civil engineers, and they typically take it junior or senior year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they, freshman, sophomore year, they're still taking calculus,
right,
physics, chemistry, and basic statics and things like that.
Okay.
Now, what kind of input did you use or did you consider when you were creating this course?
Well, it's like a lot of modern architecture. We're trying to take the best of the old and blend it with the new. And, I think we've done a pretty good job on that. You need to motivate students, so, we have the traditional stuff, but we try to show, new, exotic, exciting applications that we're doing today. So, like I said, it's a good blend of the old and the new.
We've talked with Mike McGuire in a previous episode of Fully Threaded about the course and sort of the genesis of it, and we've talked to others as well, and there seems to be a pretty unanimous consensus that there's a need for this sort of knowledge among engineering students, engineering graduates more precisely. So the demand by industry seems to be there. I wonder, at the Columbus show, did you hear a lot of suggestions and so forth?
Yeah, we heard a number of suggestions for improvement. A lot of people were very excited that there was a course. I'm going to tell you something that sounds too good or too bad to be true, but it is. I once had a student come in and ask me, he was an international student, but, he asked me which one was a nut and which one was the bolt. That's to the point we had gotten to. And, we also have a senior capstone design experience where they actually have to physically build something that they designed. And, they go into the shop and they're just a babe lost in the woods, fine threads, coarse threads, what is this number 10 versus quarter inch, what's metric, right. What are the different grades of bolts. Without this kind of clinical knowledge of engineering, they really go out in the industry with a real disservice.
I would think it would be very, very good if you could actually, even thinking back to my days coming out of engineering school, I spent time doing a project the government gave me instantly trying to work out what factors affected making a screw thread, and for me it was like a lighter turning on to realize actually there were really practical things you could use.
Sure. And I just want to say it fits into another educational thread, which we call clinical knowledge. When I say clinical, you think, of course, of medicine. But, even a doctor that's going to go into research better know how to take a blood pressure and give a shot and some of the mundane things that every doctor should know. And if someone's going to be a fastener expert or not, if they're a degreed engineer, they need to know something about fastening that holds everything around them together. And, that's what we're bringing to them now as an elective, but maybe eventually more than that requirement.
A question for you. Now, you've already said that some of the fastener industry is going to be a little bit different in the future, but do you see one of those differences is, say, a difference in materials or just a difference in which materials are being held together by fasteners?
I think both. If you look at some of the proposals for automobiles that'll hit around 2016, 2018, 20 time frame, The goal is a 50% reduction in frame weight, the unibody structure.
Uh-huh.
And to get that, you're talking 2, 3, 4 times the current price. So it's not going to happen unless we can do quantum changes in cost and still applying fasteners, but, you know, in novel and interesting ways. And there actually needs to be, many people say, the technological development. It needs to be fasteners applied in new materials, as you said, and in particular joining dissimilar materials.
Right.
A lot of the issues involved in that. There will be fasteners. What they fit into and the kind they look at may not look exactly the same as what we have today.
Do you think that adhesives will be playing a major part in this as well?
Adhesives will be a major part. One of the big constraints in automotive is repairability. You know, I was surprised, looking ahead almost 10 years on the drawing board, one of the big players is the insurance industry. You know, and one of the concerns when we went from body-on-frame vehicles to unibody is, you know, is every fender bender going to mean I have to total the vehicle?
Right.
And we had a similar concern now. They were able to work with unibody and have subframes such that, yeah, it's maybe 10% more expensive in terms of liability than body-on-frame. If we went today to multi-material vehicles, it would be a disaster in terms of the insurance industry and therefore the rates that the public pay, because these frames would be totaled with almost no repair possible. And this is where fasteners come in. You know, I can adhesive weld the whole body like, let's say, a Lotus Elan, but, you know, I have vehicles out on the road that are completely unrepairable from a structural point of view. And this is where fasteners come in. I'm still going to have pieces that are integrated within some modules, but these big modules still need to be able to be bolted on and off for repair.
Can I ask you why, of all cars in the world, you would have chosen a Lotus Elan?
Well, because it's actually pointed to in a very good way today, because it's an example of a vehicle out there that uses multi-materials. There's foam, there's aluminum, there's some composites. So it's kind of what we want to head to in a broad range, but we can't afford that. So we like the idea, but we got to...
Just so the audience knows, the inside joke is Brian's been driving a Lotus Elan for about the last 12 years.
Oh, my goodness. Major faux pas on my part.
That's not... No, not at all.
No, but it's pointed to where we want to go, but we can't afford it.
Right.
So how do we get there
right.
in a slightly different way that we can afford to do it, both in manufacturing cost and repair costs?
Would it be safe to say that, in this case, fasteners are really what's protecting the world, keeping it safe?
Oh, definitely.
I thought so.
Right.
You know, and you know, the average public doesn't realize how much engineering goes into these fastening systems, and you know, fasteners have to be on the table from day one to do this efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Well, the average public doesn't get to think about the fact that almost everything they do in life has been designed at some stage by an engineer for them.
Well, the more surprising thing is that previously, most engineers didn't realize the significance of it either, and it's a good thing that this program has been developed.
Right.
Let's get back to the Columbus show for a moment, because I know you had a chance to interface with a lot of folks from industry right there on the show floor, and I'm curious what kinds of questions you were receiving from them.
Well, people were interested in the course. People were also interested, I guess, in our research, because, you know, in my way, if I go down to the show and I look in the different booths, you know, everybody had a particular piece of the puzzle, so to speak, different types of fastening solutions. You know, but what I think is holding things back from the next level that I just described is we need to integrate all this, and we need to modify it somewhat. I mean, let's face it, the basic ideas of threads and friction and locking are not going to change. But, you know, they need to be applied to these new situations. Bolts have always been a very economical, efficient way of holding things together. They're just going to have to change slightly for this, you know, new paradigm of multi-material joining.
Oh, that's a really fascinating comment, actually. I've got a comment you could post back to the previous one, and it was to do with the comment about the Lotus Elan was that it was designed in a very advanced way. The problem was that the technology wasn't up to the attempt to build it, and each car lost about $10,000 US because it was so difficult to build.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, 8,500 pounds a car was lost.
How many of them did they build?
They built 300 for American market. That's
one of our graduate students has one, and I look for it. I mean, the lightweight makes it a blast to drive. And the idea is, it has, like I said, it has great ideas, but we can't afford that.
Right, that was the problem.
Certainly Chevrolet and Honda don't want to lose $10,000 a vehicle.
No, that's right.
Well, maybe the new Chevrolet will.
Right. Actually, at the time that Lotus was built, General Motors owned Lotus for 2 years.
I mean, their goal actually is, their specific goal is by 2018, they want to have a main structure that's 30% lighter, and they're willing to pay twice as much for that.
Wow. So
that right now is still unachievable.
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive goal, actually.
Right. And it doesn't mean the vehicle price is double, because there's powertrain and there's a lot else in there.
Right.
The frame is, maybe 15-20% of the total price, but they're willing to double it, but we still can't do that and save 30%. That's where the technology in fastening as well as materials needs to be developed.
Well, when some of these graduates begin entering the workforce, I guess that's going to really help the cause. And when will that be? When will the first students graduate from the program with the new knowledge that you're imparting?
Well, they've graduated this year, and we're looking to expand the course. It was offered as a pilot back in early 2010, and next year we'd like to get it on the books as a formal elective. So unfortunately, we're talking only 35 students, but eventually I would like to expand it here at Ohio State within American Society of Mechanical Engineers, try to encourage other universities to do it, and possibly offer it at different companies that will be on the vanguard of trying to create these new structures.
Now, were any of your students, were they able to claim that it was a necessary part of their studies to go to the have a look at the American Le Mans cars that turned up at your university last weekend? I would be trying to do that.
I was on a trip and I missed them, but I heard they were quite impressive.
Right.
We did as part of the course take a tour of Honda. Honda North America is one of their big facilities in Marysville, Ohio, about 15, 20 miles from the university. And you should see their eyes open. They know there's cars, but when you go in final assembly, what you're basically seeing is fasteners being turned. They get what's called in the industry a body in white, and you put parts on it. And as you go down that assembly line, it's nothing but primarily nuts and bolts, putting parts onto the vehicle.
Yeah, it's a great practical view, isn't it?
Yes, very much so.
Tony, are there opportunities for companies to get involved with the program?
Yes, we do a number of services. We give advice, we give training. If needed, we've done product redesign, we've done research on fastening systems. So if anyone wants to get in contact with me, email is luscher.3@osu.edu. So LUSCHER.3@osu.edu. And they can also reach me on my phone, which would be 614-946-0131.
Tony Luscher, you are an associate professor with the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Ohio State University, and I understand you'll be exhibiting at NAFS West, so we'll see you out there too.
Definitely. Look forward to it myself.
Okay, well, yeah, make sure you come and see us. Say hello, because we'll be there.
I certainly will.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tony. We really learned a lot.
Yeah, thanks for your time, mate.
Thank you.
There's more Fully Threaded coming up.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com and FCH, works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
This is a traveling salesman at Fastener Talk, FastenerBlog.net, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric, back with you in the online Fastener Party Bungalow.
Thank you.
Well, that was pretty interesting where Tony was talking a little bit about your old buddy, the Lotus Elan.
Yes, now that is so strange. He's right in many ways, and Tony is a really, really smart guy, and the work he's been doing in application of new technologies to fastening is really, really fascinating. It's going to affect all of us in the future. But he's right about the Lotus. And it was a very advanced car. The problem was it was so complicated to build. It nearly bankrupted Lotus.
Right, you were saying. Well, what year was that car?
They made the American version for one single year, 1991. And there was another run in Europe for a year after that.
Well, it's a really good-looking car, and it's fun to drive. What does that thing weigh?
Oh, I don't really know, but it's very, very light, and it's made of fiberglass.
Well, he's a good guy to know, and I'm glad we were able to have him on the show. It was also nice talking with Mike McNulty, and now we know a little bit more about how he got into things, and I guess there were really no surprises with some of his observations, but good to hear him right out of the horse's mouth.
Right.
And I guess we should thank all our guests, Dr. Tony Luscher, Mike McNulty, and also Matt Ulrich. Don't forget that the fall meeting of the NFDA is taking place in Chicago on September 14th and 15th. And I should also mention that if you're not going to be at the NFDA meeting, there's an event being put on by the Midwest Fastener Association on September 15th, and that's their Fasteners 101 Introduction to Fasteners course in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. So if you're somewhere in the Midwest, it's well worth attending. I actually attended this course last year. The current president of MWFA, Rich Pease, was one of the main instructors. And I tell you, the man he's a virtual Houdini with a torque wrench.
Right. No, I haven't seen that, but I believe you.
Well, the course is really well worth it if that's kind of your, the level you fly at, which for me, very appropriate. You can get in touch with Nancy Rich over at the Midwest Fastener Association for details on that. Again, it's September 15th. And I hope you will get in touch with us, folks, and let us know how we're doing, how you like the show, what you'd like to hear, and so forth. And the email address for that is ftr@fullythreaded.com.
And remember that you can subscribe to the podcast and have the podcast downloaded to your iPhones. From the FTR homepage, you'll see a link on the right-hand side that says iTunes. If you click on that, it'll start up iTunes on your computer and go through the process of subscribing you, okay? And that's the easiest way.
That's right. And before we wrap up this episode, I noticed there's another post I was just toggling over on Fastener Blog, and he's talking about the economy this time. And this looks like one that you might want to get in on too, Bri. He's a little bit optimistic here, and I don't know about that, but whether or not our economy is picking back up or it's just creeping, we can contrast this with what's going on in China right now. I'm sure everybody's heard the headlines, or they've seen the headlines about this amazing 60-mile long traffic jam.
Yes, well, various different reports say it's there and gone, and you don't quite know. I think the Chinese government wishes it wasn't there, actually.
Yeah, well, who would want it?
Well, if you're a taxi driver with a meter running, I guess it'd be all right.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, some of the people that were living near the traffic jam, I guess, were faring okay. They were selling various products to the people stuck in the traffic jams, which from some accounts were up to 12 hours long. Did you read that? I read the reports all over the board.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could always order Chinese takeout. I guess you couldn't. Sorry. Bad joke.
I don't know how that works. We'll have to ask Rob Lucas about that sometime when we have him on.
Yeah, I did actually see some of the images on Google, and they showed like 20-lane roads blocked up, actually.
Well, this is the point that I was going to raise, though, is that here's an example of an economy which is just burgeoning, and the infrastructure apparently, at least in this place, hasn't kept up.
Yeah, it shows that it takes a lot of things to really keep an economy going, and just pumping dough into it or money into it is not the only way, and certainly not the best way.
Well, it takes time for infrastructure to catch up, at least in the case of economies that kind of experience this hyper growth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I guess we take our commute for granted, though. It's a hell of a lot easier than anything like this.
Well, I like to think that we're doing our part to make commutes much easier.
Yeah, well, how's that?
Well, just imagine, it wouldn't be so bad. You could be sitting in your car and with an iPhone and listening to Fully Threaded.
I like the way you think. Well, that's going to put episode 10 in the can. For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fastener's Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, okay?